It is May 13th, 2024, and Russia is on the offensive, capturing 9 villages since Friday. Now, Russian forces are specifically targeting the Kharkov region. As a reminder, Kharkov is Ukraine's second largest city. There's a lot of significance here, but of course, it is not an easy task. But we are in a position where Kiev's forces are struggling not just with weapon shortages, but also ongoing manpower shortages. Yes, that continues to be the case, even with all of the schemes that Zelensky's regime has concocted to try to force more and more men, whether they be prisoners, whether they be disabled, to the front lines. Now, as all of this is happening, we continue to be in a place where you have NATO members threatening the possibility of individual countries within the alliance sending their troops to Ukraine. Of course, we know this would be the precursor to World War III. So, why are they continuing to double down on the possibility? And is that something we could actually see happen? We discussed all that and more earlier with a special guest. So, let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Andrei Martyanov, a veteran author and Russian military expert. Andrei, thanks so much for taking the time to join me again.
My pleasure, Rachel. My pleasure.
Now, I want to get your take on the latest here because I know that the Kremlin actually confirmed earlier today that they are planning to replace Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in what they described as a plan aimed at more deeply integrating the defense industrial base with the national economy. Now, Shoigu is set to be replaced by the current acting first deputy prime minister, who is also a trained economist. How do you see this move and the timing of it?
Oh, it's good. It's that totally gets into the well, it's not pattern, it's the law, so to speak, of the new government by President Putin and some ministers, federal ministers, such as defense minister, for example, are his prerogative. It's not the prerogative of the new prime minister who forms his cabinet. And Mr. Belousov, well, Mr. Mishustin, which was expected totally, who stays on his job, and he was outstanding manager of Russian economy. Mr. Belousov is actually the brain behind this success of Russian economy. And obviously, Shoigu is actually promoted. He went to the higher position of the Secretary of the Security Council. If some people do not understand what have happened, he wasn't demoted. He was actually going step up. As for Mr. Belousov, obviously we have to keep in mind that the Russian military-industrial complex is a tremendous accumulation of the scientific and technological expertise, just outstanding. And a lot of that expertise is actually dual use. So you have to incorporate, I'll give you example. Obviously, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was known as the Star Wars, was a complete failure. It was the fairy tale which was sold to the public. But one of those benefits which was gained through this dual use technologies, guess what? What we are using right this very moment. It's internet development of the processing power of the microchips, and things of this nature. So the same is going now with Russian defense ministry, which is, as I already stated, immense concentration of the technological and scientific expertise. And Mr. Belousov is there on the, so to speak, how to put it politely or more precisely, he gets two halves together then. That's his task, apart from obvious things of improving the social support for Russian veterans and things of this nature. So, and that's his task, and that's what he's going to be doing.
Okay, that's good to know and good to kind of keep in mind when it comes to, because I know there have been plenty of reports out there on this, but good to know what's actually happening on the inside. Now, over on the battlefield, we also have Russia on the offensive in the Kharkov region, with the Russian Defense Ministry reporting that its forces have captured 9 villages since Friday. Now, we know that Kharkov is Ukraine's second largest city, and it's less than 40 kilometers from the border with Russia. What do you see as Russia's strategy here right now?
Well, it's obvious moving of this line, battle line, away from Belgorod and Kursk regions. And we know what happened with Belgorod to Belgorod 2 days ago, essentially. It's continuation of the terrorist indiscriminate attacks on the civilian population. This is the only capability NATO has, and it's stooges from Kiev regime. But yes, Kharkov offensive is, yeah, moving of this cordon sanitaire, if you wish, and making sure that those areas of Russia are not attacked. But currently, Russia has 6 operational groupings. And that means what? It could also serve the purpose, which already happening, of the stretching all those minuscule Ukrainian resources and reserves. And guess what? They started to throw those reserves to the Kharkov operational axis. And yeah, so you can expect something else, but I don't know. I'm not with the general staff. They are the guys who do it all. So, and if some people do not understand that Minister of Defense in Russia is primarily the economics guy, the guy who runs the homestead, so to speak. All command and control of Russian armed forces is with the general staff, and we know that Mr. Gerasimov stays in place, and he's one of the best chiefs of general staff we had like ever. So since Antonov, I would say.
Yeah, and that's also good to know as we're looking at, what we're seeing on the battlefield, what it actually translates to. I think especially for here in the US, because I feel like our defense minister, I don't know exactly what he handles. I know that Lloyd Austin seems to be the one who shows up to things when Antony Blinken doesn't get the job done, and then they have to send in the defense minister. That's the US way of doing things. But speaking of kind of that comparison, if we were to go back to early 2022, you had Russia in a position where when it came to the Kiev regime, Russia was talking about the need for denazification and demilitarization. And now we're getting to the point where the speech is changing a little bit, right? They're talking not just about the need for that, but also the realization that Zelensky's government, as it stands, for as long as it is there, as long as it is propped up by NATO, then there are going to be constant problems between the Kiev regime and Russia. When it comes to Russia's long term goals for Ukraine, how do you think that the possibility of regime change fits into that, even if they're not going about it the US way of just going in and taking out the leader right away? Is that something that you think that they are seriously considering right now?
Oh yeah, it was considered from the get-go, and we have to keep in mind that actual special military operations started on in April after the breakdown of the negotiations in Istanbul, and the act by this clown from London, Boris Johnson, who was acting on behalf of obviously Washington. But it was from the get-go, and especially after Zelensky, made sure that the constitution doesn't allow him to negotiate anything. But the question is, as Mr. Lavrov stated today, very clearly, he's another the guy who's literally indispensable and who stays. He said, if NATO wants to fight us in Ukraine, you know what? Welcome. We're ready. So Russia's, we know that Ukraine as a state doesn't exist as such. It's totally propped up by U.S. and European money. Militarily, it has been defeated dramatically. I mean, we're looking at what now? Fourth iteration of their. My gosh, the slaughter is on the unimaginable scale and against armed forces of Ukraine. And now we have Mr. Lavrov saying basically, yeah, it's all about NATO. It's not about Ukraine anymore. Ukraine will cease to exist as we know it. It's already clear. The question is now, what's NATO going to do about it? And we know it's not going to do much about it. What they desperately try to find is the off ramp, and it's as always, because this is the only thing they can do, is it's PR, those fluffy statements, that we are going to support it, but then you get somebody like even Biden comes out and say, no, we're not sending troops. Of course we're not sending troops. They're going to be annihilated, and the combined West, headed by the United States, doesn't have economic and military wherewithal to fight real war. They never had it, but now it's obvious they have been basically paraded and exposed as the paper tiger. They can still do the damage, but they're going to lose it. They're going to lose it badly, so bad that, as I already stated, Russia is not Iraq. Russia can wipe out the pretty much MI6 headquarters and the Brussels NATO headquarters in about 15 minutes. So they know it. They're not that stupid. They want to leave. They love their golf courses, just pretending that they are strategists. They have to maintain whatever they do, in their social life. That's the only thing. They are militarily, I have to admit, for the first time, I have to say, they're pathetic. They're not professionals. I don't know what they study in those military academies in combined West, but evidently not real war. And they have been exposed.
Yeah, I know, especially here in the US, it's been interesting to kind of see the US military be in this position where they're so used to these proxy conflicts that, it makes you wonder, could they handle an actual war? I mean, maybe against a smaller country, but against a country like Russia, also against a country like Russia that has been in a position of really working through the last 2 years, working out any problems that they may have run into. They're ready for battle. The US, on the other hand, not so much. But that has not stopped specifically French President Emmanuel Macron from coming out and threatening NATO troops in Ukraine, saying this is something we can't rule out, claiming that, Putin is going to come for all of Europe, as if that's something that he's been focused on when he's very clearly been focused mainly on the Donbass region for the last couple of years. What do you make of Macron's rhetoric, the fact that he keeps saying this? It feels like it's a precursor for NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, even more than the mercenaries that are already there. Is that something that you think is a legitimate concern?
No, it doesn't matter. Militarily, France is a pipsqueak. Conventionally, they are nobodies, really. I mean, even in present way, armed forces of Ukraine, whatever is left of them, okay, and considering the fact that how they have been forced into this meat grinder, I'm pretty sure the average brigade commander from armed forces of Ukraine can teach more to any French officer, including general, what real war is. They don't study those things. And evidently, they have been living in this, alternative reality, military fairy tales. Most of what I'm quoting Mr. What's his name there? Latif, General Latif, 20 years in DARPA. He says everything what the political and public, political top and public in the West and in the United States specifically know about war is from the entertainment industry. So, and I'm quoting him. It's the Future War book he published in 2016. So, yeah, you have those people that have no clue. And militarily, conventional military France is a pipsqueak. They don't have anything larger than. I don't think so. They will be able to even deploy the division-size force. They simply don't have it. And the only thing which France has is its own nuclear deterrent, which of course have been created by people like de Gaulle. So they kind of hold on to it. But other than that, militarily, they are pathetic. So is Great Britain. Where Bundeswehr doesn't exist anymore as the real force. So, and when you look at this, and who, I believe it was Douglas MacGregor who stated a few days ago, when talking to Judge Napolitano, that Russia is much more stronger militarily than all European NATO. So they want to place troops there. Okay, good luck. Russia can attack there, as already have been stated, there are basically facilities and military objects, well, let's say Great Britain or France, outside the territory of Ukraine. It has been stated very clearly. So, and what can I say? I mean, do they want to lose half of their fleet just for starters? They may. So, So it's all PR. It's all playing for the public. Macron is a bank teller boy. He knows only how to do their bank operations.
Mhm.
That's the extent of his competences. And when you look at those generals and all those military leaders in NATO, including the Pentagon, I mean, these guys don't know first thing about what real war is, what military economy is, what is the modern technology is. So they are stuck, and I've been on record for this, with the TOE, Table of Organization of Commitment of 1990. They still think about this Gulf War when they beat pardon me, some substance from the third-rate, utterly incompetent, undertrained, semi-literate, actually, army of Saddam. And they still think that's such a great thing. It never was.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And yet, when it comes to the military losses that we have seen for the US, especially looking at, say, Afghanistan, that was a major one. They just kind of brush it off, right? Or they carry on the conflict for so many years that then they say, oh, well, we're 20 years in, that doesn't matter. But it should matter. It should be something that the US is concerned about. Now, when it comes to the state that Kiev is currently in, I mean, you're talking about weapon shortages, manpower shortages. I mean, it seems like every week Kiev is coming up with some new scheme to try to force more men to war, whether that be, prisoners, whether that be those who are handicapped and disabled. And it seems like it would be incredibly concerning to watch, but the US, of course, doesn't care because that's not their men that are being sent to the battlefield. And now you have talk about the possibility of Ukraine coming up with another counteroffensive after the last one went so well last year. What do you make of the situation that Kiev is in currently, especially as you have Russia advancing?
Well, people expect those big red arrow offensives from Russia. I don't think so. It's necessary at this stage because it's pretty strategic dictum, so to speak, of the Russian army today. It's Alexander Svetchin's strategy of the exhaustion. And you can win the war not necessarily advancing much. Because what is happening, as I already stated, we're looking at what? Fourth iteration of the armed forces of Ukraine. So we're looking, and as much as it sounds horrible, and it does sound horrible, some outlets, including pretty reputable ones, they give the losses of Ukraine as high as up to 2 million people, about 1 million killed and something like on the other million maimed, and then we have people missing in action. And so we have the whole generation of people who would have been the NATO proxies basically eliminated. But this is a serious game, as I already stated. When you listen to the strategy as they define in NATO and in Washington, done by such strategists as Victoria Nuland and a bunch of the nincompoops, who, all those Petraeuses and all those, Pentagon generals. And the idea was simple: attack Russia, wait for response, impose those crushing sanctions, and then Putin's regime fall, Russia disintegrates, we go in, get resources, and voila, democracy, whatever passes for democracy basically becomes um, those people, as I already stated, they are incompetent. Political and military elites of the combined West are incompetent. We're looking at the intellectual disintegration and implosion, something I never experienced in my life. I never saw anything like this. Even though communists who sold out the country after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they had more brains than these people. So and at least they knew their interests. These people do not understand what they are doing. And as the result, we have the situation that Ukraine removed their financing, which is primarily goes, whatever the latest one was, 7 or 12 billion, which actually go to Ukraine. The most of that stays out of those 61 billion stays in United States to be stolen by all kinds of the, military industrial complex interests. Uh, that's primarily to support the and keeping afloat the state structure because they still think that what it could be preserved as the future ram against Russia. Those people literally they're veterans. They don't understand what they're doing. And as I already stated, they want the war. Russia is ready.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what's so it's strange to me to kind of watch this. And I know that, obviously, if we go back to 2022, when you have the US in a position where you have people like Victoria Newland who are saying, oh, we just have to continue to back Ukraine. We're going to hurt Russia's economy, right? We are going to target Russia in all of these different ways. They acted as if so much would happen that never happened, and it does not appear as though it's going to, at least not anytime soon. So, when it comes to the US strategy, as you were pointing out there, to almost kind of do just enough to keep the Kiev regime, the Kiev military from just completely falling apart, right? They'll say, oh, here's a few more $1 billion, here's some more weapons, but they're not doing enough. And really, I don't think that they're capable of doing enough to get Kiev to a place where they're making any significant gains against Russia. What do you make of the US strategy of support and kind of being in this place where, as you were pointing out, they're looking for an off ramp, but they haven't quite gotten to that place yet?
Well, it's autopilot. They more of the same, as my friend Larry Johnson says, and it's from the Saturday Night Live. More cowbell. That's the only thing they know how to do. Again, there are no strategists of the world class in the United States. None. Period. They're all those strategist departments, who teach all those strategists. Those guys have no clue. They really don't. They read Clausewitz and Sun Tzu, learn a couple of the paragraphs from there, and then go around parroting this into all kinds of the, gathering of the nincompoops like Council for Foreign Relations. So this is like literally people are incompetent, and that's what we observed. The miscalculation equal that to giving, who said in 1941, we just need to kick the door and it will fly off the hinges. And then, yeah, Soviet Union collapses, Stalin is executed, Russians are reduced to the bunch of slaves, and there you go. Well, we know the result. Russians ended up in Berlin in 1945. So most of the world, most of the military history, and most of the political history as it exists in the American Academy, in American military institutions, most of it, not all, is confabulated. It literally just invented its narrative. So you have American officers who still believe that the United States defeated Hitler. So and when you have this, they don't understand how the real war proceeds. They don't study, for example, Russian military. They never did. So, and the same, let alone, as we already mentioned, we have people who know about war from Hollywood and Tom Clancy, fairy tales. And that's the environment, cultural milieu, so to speak. You cannot break through this echo chamber, which I write about in my latest book, which is coming up very shortly. So, and how do you explain it to them? There are people in the United States Army who believe that General Patton was a great general. They based it upon the Hollywood movie. So it's like you cannot even explain, dudes. You had 2 million
Mhm.
people, pardon me for using this, almost 2 million people died on both sides. Wehrmacht and, other Axis armies and Red Army at Stalingrad alone. You know, they have no comprehension of those scales, of those scope of things. And now they have been shown a real war and they lost. They don't know what to do. You see,
Yeah.
that's the problem. They don't have wherewithal, as you correctly stated. They are incapable to supply anything anymore. You saw
Yeah.
yourself the performance of the NATO technology. It is dismal. It's pathetic, So, and we have now a parade of the Western equipment, which they say the best in the world. It's in Moscow. People go there and look at it. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a not a good look for the US, and yet so important to remember that the US got themselves into all of this. It did not have to be like this. This is not, Russia intentionally picking a fight with the US. This is the US decided that this is the fight that it wanted, and now it is getting the results that it's getting. And I know that there is certainly a lot at stake here all around. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down the latest here. Andrei Martyanov, a veteran author and Russian military expert, will definitely be keeping an eye out for your next book. Thank you so much for your time and insight
Thank you,
today.
Rachel. My pleasure.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.